Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at performance evaluation, but probably not in the way you're expecting.
Yeah, this is a bit of an unusual one. We're actually comparing two completely different worlds.
Totally different. On one hand, you have the high-speed, high-stakes world of a thoroughbred racehorse.
And on the other, the incredibly detailed qualitative assessment guide for a SPOTT Pilates instructor.
It sounds kind of absurd, I know, but the source that bridges this gap is this really fascinating interview.
It was with a former racehorse named Gandour, and he's now a pedagogical assistant. And he saw these, incredible parallels between his life on the track
Yeah.
and how Pilates instructors are evaluated.
And that's the real mission here. The central question in both of these worlds is actually the same. How do you take a complex, living being with all their history, their limits, their potential, and turn them into a score?
A number. Lines on a board, as Gandour puts it. How do you do that without, betraying the reality of what's actually happening?
So we're going to unpack how the numbers, the quantitative stuff, and the qualitative descriptions work together, or sometimes how they fail.
And they can fail spectacularly.
Okay, so let's start where it feels most objective. The racetrack. When you look at a horse's program, it's all numbers. Time, position, weight. It seems like pure math.
Right. It gives you this illusion of certainty.
Yeah.
But let's break that down. Time is, well, it's the great deceiver.
How so? A stopwatch is a stopwatch.
It is, and it's incredibly reliable in that sense. It's measured to the millisecond. The result looks, unassailable. But the number is almost meaningless without context.
Okay.
Gandour's big point was this. A horse that runs a mile in, say, 1 minute 36 seconds on a really heavy, muddy track after a storm.
Right, a real slog.
That's arguably a much better performance than 1 minute 34 on a firm, fast track. So the time is reliable, sure.
Yeah.
But what is validly telling you about the horse's ability, that's really fragile.
And then you get position, first, second, third. That seems simple enough.
But it's totally contaminated by variables. It's not just your horse. It's the jockey. It's traffic in the pack. It's an opening that suddenly closes 50 meters in the finish line.
So the rank summarizes the race, but it can totally hide the horse's real potential.
Which brings us to the third layer, the handicap. This is actually where the human expert has to step in.
The handicapper.
Exactly. They assign a numerical weight or value to the horse based on its entire history, its consistency. And this value isn't a measurement. It's an interpretation. It's a hypothesis about the horse's true potential.
So even in this world of pure numbers, you end up relying on a subjective human judgment to make sense of it all.
You have to. The trainers all know that performance is this bundle of factors: genetics, nutrition, fatigue, even the horse's psychology. That's why they've had to bring in more tech.
Like what?
Biomechanical analysis. They use these high-speed cameras to look at stride symmetry, the fluidity of the movement. They have to look inside the movement to see if the number on the clock is telling the truth.
That's a perfect transition, because now we're moving from external output, how fast you run, to the internal quality of movement and communication. Let's go from the racetrack to the Pilates studio.
And specifically STOTT Pilates, which is one of the most rigorous, clinically focused methods out there.
And that rigor is why their evaluation is so interesting. It doesn't measure how strong you are. It measures how well you can teach.
Right. It breaks down the art of teaching into 5 major areas you can actually score.
So how do you do that? How do you quantify something as subjective as what makes a great teacher? What's the first pillar?
The first one is postural analysis. The instructor has to show they can systematically look at a body from head to toe and clearly verbalize what they see.
And it has to be more than just, oh, your shoulders look a little high.
Exactly. That's the difference between a vague observation and a professional analysis. They have to prove it with anatomy. They have to be able to palpate the bony landmarks.
So physically touch and identify specific points on the skeleton to confirm what they're seeing.
Yes. If you can't find the exact spot on the hip bone or shoulder blade that's out of alignment, then your correction is just a guess. So the analysis has to be grounded in science, not just, a hunch.
Okay, so that precision is step one. What comes after you've done the analysis?
Step 2 is the session objective. Now that you've found the issues, you have to state a clear goal. You can't just say, we're going to strengthen the core.
Too generic.
Way too generic. You have to specify which deep stabilizing muscles you're targeting, why you chose them based on your analysis, and which Pilates principles you'll use. The score depends on that clear, logical link between the problem and the solution.
You can trace their logic back. I like that. What's next?
The third area is their understanding of the 5 basic principles. things like breathing, centering, alignment. But it's not about reciting a definition from a book.
It's about application.
It's about explaining the what, why, and how. Can you use vivid imagery? Can you use anatomical terms? And can you use your hands' tactile corrections to make that principle actually happen in someone's body?
Wow. That's a lot to juggle in an exam. You need the technical knowledge, the communication skills, and that physical intuition all at once.
It's a huge lift. And the last two areas are about the execution. Fourth is programming. Are the exercises you chose right now for the goal, for the person, for the equipment, is it progressive?
And number 5.
Pedagogy and execution. This is the core teaching, your rhythm, your cadence, the clarity of your cues, and knowing the repertoire well enough to modify an exercise on the spot if someone's struggling.
And this all gets graded, what, on a scale of 6 to 10?
Right, from insufficient all the way up to extensive knowledge where you're anticipating problems and promoting safe movement.
Okay, so this brings up that big conflict you mentioned earlier, reliability versus validity. With horse racing, the stopwatch is super reliable. It's a machine. But the validity, what the number really means, is shaky.
And with the Pilates system, it's the opposite. The theoretical validity is incredibly high. The criteria are all directly linked to what we know makes for safe, effective teaching. It's tied to things like preventing injury.
But the reliability has to be delicate. I mean, if I take the exam with one evaluator who loves anatomical cues, and you take it with another who prefers more artistic imagery,
We could get different scores for the same skill level. You've hit on the central paradox. There's this unavoidable piece of subjectivity. The guide gives a strong framework, but one examiner might fixate on a forgotten step, while another focuses purely on your hands-on corrections.
so both systems try to limit bias, but neither one can eliminate it completely. They just trade one type of ambiguity for another.
That's it. And that's because they're capturing fundamentally different things. The racetrack metrics are quantitative, how fast, what rank. It's the external, measurable stuff.
But it doesn't tell you how the horse feels, the strain on its back, its psychology.
Whereas the Pilates criteria are almost all qualitative. The quality of the analysis, the relevance of the objective, the precision of a correction. To use an analogy, horse racing measures the length of the stride, the raw output.
In the Pilates guide.
It measures the quality of the connection, the ability to work the body correctly from the inside out without forcing it. It's measuring the quality of the communication between the teacher and the client's body.
So with all this complexity, what's the big shared trap that both of these systems can fall into?
It's the reduction. The temptation to reduce a living, breathing being to just their score.
Right. The horse with the 40 handicap or the candidate who got a 7 in queuing.
And when we start at the number, we forget the entire journey. We forget the learning process, the hidden strengths, the potential for growth that's sitting right there behind the score.
Which leads right into how these schools are actually used. Gandour said the horse evaluation is mostly a summative test. It's designed to sort and rank. It's a verdict.
It is a verdict, but the Pilates evaluation, even though it's a decisive moment, is meant to be part of a longer formative process. It's designed to develop the instructor, not just label them.
So for the racehorse, the ranking is pretty much a fixed thing that decides its future races, its value.
You can't exactly pause the race to give corrections. But for the Pilates instructor, that evaluation guide is an intense feedback loop that they use throughout their entire training. It shows them exactly where their gaps are.
But a good horse trainer has to use those results formatively too, right? They can't change the past race, but they can change the future.
A great trainer looks way beyond the final rank. They're looking at intermediate split times, biomechanics reports, how the horse handled the corners, if it faded in the last stretch.
They know it needs more endurance work.
Exactly. Or if its stride symmetry got worse under pressure, they'll focus on physical therapy. The rank becomes a data point they use to calibrate the training load and recovery.
And that's identical to what happens in the studio.
Functionally, yes. A low score in postural analysis means you need to go back and drill palpating bony landmarks. A weak programming score means you need to work on linking your objectives to your exercises. The guide isn't a finish line. It's a tool to organize your work.
So the note is never the end of the story. It's just a snapshot to help you figure out what to do next.
Which brings us to Gandour's idea for a hybrid model, taking the best parts of both worlds.
I think this is probably the biggest takeaway for anyone listening. How do you marry the rigor of the stopwatch with the nuance of a rubric?
Okay, so first, you have to keep a strong objective core. For Pilates, that means some things are non-negotiable. You hit the time limits, you cover the required exercises, and the link between your analysis and your objective has to be, logically airtight. That's your bedrock.
But then you need to structure the subjective part better.
Yes, through structured qualitative data, you enrich the grading criteria with really precise examples. So instead of an evaluator just writing poor cueing,
It's not helpful.
no. The rubric should force them to be specific. Candidate failed to use anatomical landmarks and relied on vague metaphors. That gives you something you can actually work on.
It grounds the feedback in reality. What else?
The second big piece is calibration. We know evaluators are subjective, so you have to train them. Just like handicappers argue over a horse's value, evaluation juries need to watch the same candidate and then compare their scores.
And discuss the differences.
And discuss why one person gave a 6 and another gave an 8. That's the only way to reduce that personal bias and build a truly shared standard.
So professional development for the evaluators. Makes sense.
Third, every evaluation has to include progression tracking. The results sheet should immediately become a roadmap. It should say, here are your priority areas, here are some tools to work on them, and here's when we'll reassess. The note is the starting line.
And the last piece was about ethics, right?
Yes, an ethical and relational dimension. You have to explicitly evaluate how the instructor manages the relationship. How do they hold the space? Do they respect the client's limits? Are they ensuring movement is safe and conscious? It's about measuring their integrity, not just their knowledge.
That really does sum it all up. You have the trap of the pure number, believing that what's measurable is all that's true.
And the trap of pure intuition, which can be arbitrary and unshareable. A great evaluator, like a great trainer, has to hold those two things in tension.
So for you listening, especially if you're a future instructor, we want to leave you with one final thought, straight from the world of the thoroughbred.
Do not let yourself be reduced to your final score. Your goal is constant progression. You need to structure your prep like you're training for a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Methodical, deliberate, working on one skill at a time.
And you have to accept that on exam day, just like on race day, some things will be out of your control. A mental slip, a weird question, an examiner's personal preference. That's just the chaos of the moment.
The evaluation is just a passage. It's a gate. The real goal isn't to win the test. It's to learn how to guide human bodies with rigor and with benevolence, and to progress for a long, long time without breaking down, just like a well-managed champion.